following is a production of Cary TV, the Town of Cary's government access channel.
Good evening and welcome to the February 21st, 2013 Planning and Development Committee meeting. I'm Don Frantz. Joining me to my left is Mayor Pro Tem Gale Adcock. To my right, Councilmember Ed Yerha, and to his right, Town Manager Ben Shiver. We have two items on the consent agenda this evening. Would anybody care to pull anything from consent? None? Okay, just so everybody watching at home knows, item number 1 is a condemnation resolution for the Copperleaf Reserve Subdivision Sewer Extension, and item 2 is citizen participation schedule for the fiscal year 14 annual action plan. If you'd like to learn any more about those items, you can find those on the town's website at townofcary.org. First up on our discussion agenda is East Chatham Street improvements, and we'll hear from Mr. Eric Simpson of our staff.
Good evening, Council. Tonight we have before you staff's request of $120,000 to complete the East Chatham Street infrastructure improvements from Mitchell's Pharmacy to the Chatham Street Cafe. If you recall, these improvements include curb modifications, sidewalk improvements, fiber optic connectivity, and a parking lot. Funding resources are identified and detailed in the staff report. Should Council approve staff's request, we will be able to move immediately forward to complete these projects. I'll be glad to answer your questions.
Thank you. Any questions, comments?
No. I'm good with that.
Okay. No questions. I think the committee supports staff recommendation, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up on our agenda is consideration of a lease agreement at 155 Wilkinson Avenue, and we'll hear from Mr. Tim Bailey.
Good afternoon, Council. This is a lease, and actually an extension of a lease for the Cary Creative Reuse Center at 151 Wilkinson Avenue. As the lease is now combined is over a year, it requires council approval. The terms of the lease, I think, are pretty straightforward, and there's really no issue with that. It's about the rate, the monthly rate. We have a range of rates indicated. The tenant would prefer during the roundabout project to pay a reduced rate of $325. We have been receiving $650. There was a term in the original agreement that at the end of the lease that it would go up to $975, and we've also given you, just for reference, the market rate, which we believe is about $1,800 a month. Staff recommendation is to continue the $650 per month rate.
Okay. Any questions?
I don't have a question, just a comment, is that I'm sure that the necessary improvements in the road along Chatham Street to create and construct those roundabouts are affecting a lot of businesses. And I think if we start favoring one over, as much as I love Betsy and what she's doing, I think if we start favoring one business over another, it's a real slippery slope. And I appreciate the fact that she asked, but I think the staff recommendation is a very solid one.
I would agree.
What we're doing here, really, the current lease would say it's $975 at the moment, so we're really reducing it to $650. So it's in the business's favor.
Yeah, the automatic default on a month-to-month would have went to the 975 level.
Okay. Seems like we agree with staff recommendation. All right. Thank you very much. Next up, item 3, Collector Avenue Policy Amendment, and we'll hear from Miss Juliet Andes. Nope.
Well, Julia, you
Sorry.
Not looking well today.
Look at an ugly mug.
Hey,
Me, so. Tonight, staff is asking for approval of a minor amendment to our street collector avenue policy. Collectors are required to be named avenues. Issue came up a few months ago, and you asked us to look at some flexibility. Flexibility that we're offering would allow where an existing section has already been built and has another name other than avenue, the policy would allow us to consider that name in place of avenue. So it's a very minor amendment, and we would recommend your approval.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
Makes perfect sense.
I think the amendment addresses what we asked to be addressed. Personally, I just don't like the name Avenue all the time. That's a personal opinion, and that's not what you were trying to address here. I think the amendment takes care of what we need.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think anytime we can maintain consistency with our road names, it's the better for it. So we're all in favor of staff recommendations.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Ms. Andes.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, item 4, Land Development Ordinance Text Amendments, Round 25. And we'll hear from Ms. Mary Beeman.
Good evening, Council. There's 2 items, really 2 components of this item before you tonight. First are the Round 25 LDO amendments. We're asking that the Town Council set a public hearing date of March 28th for these items. There are a number of amendments that we have collected since the last round that went through the board beginning in last fall, I believe. So they come from a number of different sources. All the amendments are included in your staff report. For most of them, we have actual text that's drafted, and between now and the public hearing, we'll have some refinement of the text and the background information, but you can see from the staff report basically what's being proposed there. The second item that we're bringing before you tonight, we have had several inquiries in recent months related to food trucks and mobile farmers markets. This is an issue that's received a lot of local interest recently. I know in the last year or so there have been ordinances adopted in Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill related to food trucks. There's a number of different issues that can come up with those, particularly in relation to how they interact with brick and mortar restaurants. So at this time, we're requesting two things from you related to the food truck items. First is to get some direction as to whether or not you would like to, for staff to proceed with developing amendments related to these ordinances. And if so, then what process would we go through in order to do that and get the type of input that we need? What staff is recommending is that we take this item to a work session in March or April and just have some discussion there and get some feedback as to what the concerns are. We can give you some additional information with possible issues, and then also look to what process we might go through so that any stakeholders and interested citizens could feed into that process early on.
Okay. All right. How about we tackle the LDO amendments first and then move on to food trucks and suspended signs. So questions or comments on any of the LDO amendments?
Well, I'm in favor of moving forward with the public hearing, and what I'd say is, because I'm always interested in hearing what the public has to say, I'll kind of reserve judgment on most of these. I see they've got the suspended sign thing in here with a couple of options already, which I think is really quick work. We just did that at our last meeting. So I don't really have a lot of comments about them at this time, knowing that some of them are going to change between now and then public comments will make a lot of difference as well.
Okay. Mr. Yerha?
No, I concur. I'm in favor of moving it on to a public hearing. I'd like to hear what everybody has to say about it. From a personal standpoint, some of these I don't necessarily buy into or agree with, and I would maybe want to speak against it at some point, but I'm just not sure whether
Early days.
this is the point
Right.
to do that. You know, I'd rather see what the public has to say. I'd rather see what the final text is of the amendments and then have our normal discussion. But I certainly don't think there's anything here that should be, you know, stopped at this point. I think we can move along.
Okay. I do have some questions. Try to go in order as best I can. Item B3, the fences and walls that talks about the framing facing the interior of the property that it's surrounding, not the exterior. Would existing fences and walls be grandfathered in? I mean, that's my question on that one.
I believe that they would be, yes.
Okay. Love the idea about the lights and the trees and along the buildings throughout town. I know that's one you don't necessarily agree with.
One I don't.
The beekeeping allowed in, or the proposal to possibly allow it in community gardens so long as a beekeeper signs a permit. I love the idea of the bees in the community gardens or the possibility for that. I just kind of get concerned about what exactly defines a beekeeper, who monitors that, who ensures the beekeeper continues to monitor the site, how often is the beekeeper there, that kind of stuff. So I think those are questions I'll be looking for answers to as it goes forward. C3, the storage areas at multifamily, it seems that we're raising the ceiling height of those to 7 feet, which to me makes sense. I mean, you obviously want to be able to stand up in the darn thing, but is this in response to a complaint, problem we're seeing? Or?
This was just something in the course of working with this that the staff brought up. We just more as a cleanup item, because right now the measurement is in square feet, so theoretically it doesn't really speak to volume. So we were just trying to translate that into a volume.
Okay, but we haven't necessarily seen any that were like built 5 feet tall or anything. Okay.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Love D2C with the existing buildings replaced with a light kind that they don't require additional traffic improvements, that kind of thing. Let's see, where was my parking islands, B1. Recommendation to go from 5 feet wide to 10 feet wide. I understand the reasoning for it, but are we getting complaints or seeing a problem? Are we having a lot of dead bushes getting hit by cars? Or
Well,
I haven't heard anything about it is why I'm asking.
And again, this is one of, as staff has been working with these and just trying to clean up the ordinance whenever we run into issues and trying to eliminate any kind of discrepancies and issues with the ordinance. I'm not aware of specific problems that have come up, but it was brought to my attention with the staff that deal with these that it's just an area that needs to be cleaned up, because the ordinance sort of has a built-in conflict with it now, where we're requiring the landscaping, yet there's not quite enough room for it.
Okay. As this does go forward, I'd kind of like some more detail or some examples of how that might impact some of our existing, or use maybe some existing parking lots and shopping centers as examples of. My concern is, okay, we're adding 5 feet to this island, and then the parking lot might have 6 or 7 in it, so now we're talking 40 feet. I mean, how does that impact parking the site, that kind of stuff? Would it result in a loss of parking spaces or financial hardship maybe to the builder, developer, applicant, whoever? So I'd kind of like a little bit more information on that. C1, love adding wellness centers to office category. That makes all the sense in the world. And this was just a question for clarification I had under other, talking about the moped sales thing, moving that to service. Mopeds, I assume, include like scooters and stuff as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Let's move on to suspended signs. Sounds fun.
I will say that as I look at the pictures, it really brings home how nice and clean and neat and professional looking these signs look when they're suspended from a post versus a tree. And that's nothing against the gentleman who has the jewelry store. But as you think about uniformity and appearance, I would have to say my just inclination at this point is to try to go that route.
I agree.
It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I concur. I happen to like the sign at the jewelry store, but I think you're right.
It would look nicer, yeah.
Would be neater on a post, but
The
certainly-
pictures y'all put in
certainly
here are
support
really
the,
helpful.
you know, the amendment here and the changes you're making.
Okay. I too support, requiring a pulse to hold the sign. We don't want to hurt what few pretty trees we have left in the downtown. Are you also looking for direction whether we want to open this up townwide or just start in the town center?
That would certainly be direction that would be good for us to know. I think our thought had been in the town center, but if you would like us to consider that more townwide.
I think that was part
could
of the
be
motion when
incorporated.
we asked
Was
them
it?
to look at this, and because I said, let's be egalitarian, look
Right.
at the whole town, and Jennifer reminded me that often we start with looking at the town center and work any kinks out there before we, but the desire would be to go townwide and not, discriminate between
So
businesses.
maybe start
So,
downtown,
yeah,
review it in a year, see if we...
something like that.
Okay.
I don't know that a time limit was actually put on it, but I think that was the, kind of where we were going.
Okay. Would staff typically review this in a year, or if we just haven't received any complaints and everything was fine, then...
We wouldn't necessarily automatically review it in a year, but we could certainly flag that. If you wanted us to come back and revisit that in a year, we could certainly do that.
Okay. I don't know that I want to put it, but if we start getting complaints or, things aren't going as we thought they might, then yeah, we might want to
Okay.
sooner than later. Okay. So it sounds like we're all in agreement for suspended signs on a pole.
So you'd like to take the tree option out at this point? Is that your point?
Yeah,
or-
I'm fine removing
I
the
would
tree.
be okay with that too, actually, because I think that maybe we shouldn't go down that path.
It's option
if we-
B, I think, is the one for the pole. Is that correct?
Yes, and since this was written, we've also found some additional information that there are some building code issues associated with that too, so that we think it would be better to have that limited to the poles.
Now,
Makes
if we start allowing the hanging signs on a pole, how does that impact their allowable signage? I mean,
Well, that is one aspect that the amendment would address with that, with whether or not we would want that to come out of their wall sign area.
because I know this business, I think, has a ground sign and then
do.
also the hanging sign.
And they're pretty close, actually.
Right.
Yes. So those are all issues that we would want to look at with that to make sure that you didn't end up with too much signage on the property with, if you introduce this additional sign type, is that in addition to a ground sign? Would it be in place of a ground sign? And how would that work with the wall sign area that's allocated for the site?
And an unintended consequence could be if you don't include it as in part of your total signage, everybody's going to want one because, more signage. That's one of the things we hear in feedback about our sign ordinances. Some people feel they don't have enough signage. I wouldn't want to accidentally tumble into that.
Right, you don't want to approve a pole sign to find out now he has to remove the ground sign.
Or that everybody decides now I can get double signage and everybody does a ground sign and a pole. Pretty soon it,
Would this particular item also go to the March 28th public hearing as well?
Yes,
Okay.
that's our intent.
Okay, so we'll have some time to receive some input. And one thing I guess we'd all like to know is how is this going to impact the allowable ground signage that, either currently exists or might exist sometime in the future?
Rob?
I can go ahead and answer that question if you'd like. We've actually designed the proposed amendment to mimic currently downtown, if you have a ground sign that's 16 square feet or less, it doesn't count against the total allowed signage on the property. We're proposing that these hanging ground signs, if they're 12 square feet or less, they would take on that same feature, that they wouldn't count against your total signage. If you have both, then the ground sign would count against. One would be free and the other would count against your total allowable signage. So we've got some checks and balances there to try to replicate that. If you do one or the other, you're fine. You get treated like the ordinance treats you now. If you do both, then one of them counts against your allowable wall signage.
That just seems fair and
It does.
logical.
It does. My question is then, how would this impact the jewelry store? Say, for example, the sign wasn't hanging on a tree, it was on a pole. Would
Right.
both the ground sign and the hanging sign be legal?
I don't have the exact measurements, but assuming that the sign currently hanging from the tree is 12 square feet or less, they could choose to, have that for free, and then it would be a matter of do they have enough allowable sign area to cover the others. I believe they do. We can certainly look at that in detail and bring that information to you as
That'd
we
be
move
helpful.
forward.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Glad to do that. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments on that one?
No, sir.
Okay. And last but not least, food trucks and mobile farmers markets. Mr. Yerha?
I happen to like food trucks and mobile farmers markets. I think in general it's a good thing. The concern I have, of course, and I think that's probably going to be shared by at least one other person, maybe by both, is that, and it's an obvious concern, of course, is that food trucks will encroach on territory of brick and mortar restaurants that we have in town. And that's not a good thing. Perhaps there's a way, I really do think we need to address the issue, so I certainly support doing taking the time to write an ordinance to deal with it. But perhaps there are limitations we can place as to time and place for these.
There are. When you look at, have looked briefly at some of the other ordinances, within the other local jurisdictions, and basically it's, they have setback type requirements related to restaurants or to bus stops and, other fire hydrants. There's, there would be like a series of things that would be included in the ordinance that would, to help to specify the proper location so that we could, minimize any impacts and conflicts. Another possibility is looking at the, when other restaurants, for example, might be open, hours of operation.
Well, look at Mondays downtown. It's a ghost town down there. None of the restaurants, well, I shouldn't say none, but when I go downtown on Monday, I can't find any restaurants open. No, the Little Caesars is open and stuff. So there are other considerations
Right.
like that.
So there are a lot of parameters that could be put on that for the operation of it, and those are the types of things that we were suggesting having, perhaps some kind of focus type group, perhaps that, would have, be able to express all of those interests so that we could craft provisions that would minimize any negative impacts if that use was to be allowed.
I saw somewhere, I think, that you all were recommending a possible work session on that topic. I don't know that I necessarily feel that we need to have a work session on food trucks. It's just that issue's not jamming up my email inbox.
Okay.
It's not jamming mine up, but I am getting emails about it.
Gotcha.
Actually, I got my first email about 6 weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Before this, this was ever on our agenda here.
But I would almost like maybe staff to take a stab at a first shot at an amendment or LDO or ordinance for this, and then maybe let us
So with the
take it
staff
from there.
report and everything, I think, some of this ground's been plowed for us by
Other
Chapel Hill
municipalities.
and Raleigh, and I know that wasn't without controversy and everything. But, as you think about downtown in particular and economic development, one of the issues we grapple with right now is what comes first, the people or the restaurants. Well, right now, we don't have a whole lot of either. And so I see this as a way to bring people downtown, but also to other places in the town, not just downtown. I see it as an economic driver, possibly. It's also kind of a younger person's thing, and we keep talking about trying to bring the young professionals in. It's kind of the hip thing to do now, particularly the Lomo market. Has anybody seen that? I mean, I think it's an idea worth pursuing, and I'm okay with not doing a work session. I mean, I think that was probably more to relay to us what we know about the municipalities around us who've dealt with this issue and kind of get a feel for where everybody else stands, because I really don't know. We might be able to do that another way.
Right.
I'm okay with that for sure in terms of procedure.
Yeah, I would share Mr. Yerha's concerns about competition with existing business. To me, food trucks, construction sites, that kind of thing, they seem to fit. The mobile farmers market, I don't know that I really want it anywhere near, the West Cary farmers market or the downtown farmers market. It might suit us to have them for downtown festivals, events, and things like that when the need is great, but maybe not so much at other times. Yes, there are some businesses or restaurants that are closed on Mondays, but they're also open 6 days a week too. So
That's why they're closed on Monday,
yeah.
right?
Because most of them are mom and pop businesses.
Right, and they need a day off,
somewhere.
right.
So Yeah, I would like y'all to take a shot at it and then bring it to either through committee or council or however, and
Okay.
Bring it to us, we love this
Okay,
topic.
so we could do that and bring it to you. So that would be separate from round 25, but as we have something put together, then bring it back to you.
Sounds like that's
Right.
the
yeah,
time.
I don't know that we need to rush on this one by any means, but yeah, I think they have a place and I think they serve a purpose, but I don't want us to do anything that's going to negatively impact existing businesses and folks that have shelled out hundreds of thousands of dollars to open up shop here in town only to lose business to somebody driving by in a truck, you know? And then we're really trying to promote our farmers markets, the downtown one and then the one out in West Cary's, booming. I'd hate to do anything that takes away from that. So, yeah, look at the other municipalities, I guess, and see what's working and maybe what we can tweak to make work for Cary.
And I would just add, I know that y'all will do this anyway, but the impact it has had or hasn't had on other restaurants, because one of the things food trucks can do is inject a lot of variety into the choices that people have. If you really want, Mexican, and that's what you're going for, and we don't have a Mexican restaurant downtown, do we? I don't think so. Well, we got Cuban, which I love. It gives you an opportunity for more variety, and which brings more people. And one of the things Durham does a lot are food rodeos. So on a certain food truck rodeos. So they advertise this in advance. There's 6 or 8 different food trucks there, and people come in. It's almost like a little street fair kind of thing, but they do it in a parking lot atmosphere. May or may not float your boat, but they do things like that, and it brings people out, and then they shop and they do all kinds of
That's
other things.
kind of what I was thinking as far as like our downtown festivals and things. Lazy days. Yeah, I could see having 8 food trucks there. The car show, things like that. Yeah, I could see having some food trucks there.
I'm thinking Paige Walker Starlight concerts out in the garden. You have a captive
nice.
audience there. The people are attending the concert. They're not going to another restaurant while they're watching the concert, listening to the concert. So a food truck there, I think, would be
So you're thinking
would be a
time
great
and
idea.
place is very important.
Time and place.
And I do think to have some experience, real-life experience from other municipalities of the impact it has had, if any, on local businesses will be very helpful, so we don't have to guess, but at least have some ideas.
And then as it goes forward, I would have some questions on liability and permitting and who's responsible and that kind of stuff,
Thinking about who,
Somebody gets food poisoning, whose fault is it?
I'm guessing they have to be inspected by the health department, just like anybody who serves
Yes.
prepared food, so they get a certificate, and they get a grade, and they have to meet certain requirements, so the inspectors
I want to
check.
better understand that.
Right, there are requirements related to their water and trash and, a number of different things along those lines that would be incorporated.
Right, that makes sense. We want to protect our folks. So.
I don't, yeah. Okay.
But I'm excited we're going to look at it. I do think we need to take a look and hear what people think about it.
Actually, it's getting me hungry right now.
Yeah, it's about supper time, too.
How about some chicken? All right. Anything else on old or new business? No?
No, sir.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and we stand adjourned.
Thank you.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.